We're live. I think your speaker.
We're
I think
live.
your speakers are on, maybe, because I heard the intro music playing back. Yeah,
Really?
the delay. There's a delay, and you're hearing the show back. So hopefully we're live. I think your speaker. Yeah, speakers are on, maybe, because I heard the intro music playing back. Lila, do you have YouTube on?
You know what? Hey, everybody! Welcome to the show. I did. I'm. Yeah. It's,
Okay, good.
I
Good,
did.
good, good.
I'm good now. Thank you. Thank you. Hi. Hey, Pat. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to the Punch Up Pod with Lila and Pat. How are you doing today? We're trying a few new things. So
Yeah, we have a new platform. We're on our third platform. None of them have been good enough for us so far. So we're going to just keep trying them all out.
keeping that grip going. Do we have a coin jar? Somebody could help us with all these. I keep doing these year-long subscriptions too. I'm like, well, I'll save money. So it's like $150, but I'm saving money and I keep having to just take it. Yeah.
So many comments to that. I got to let that one go. So yeah, how was your week? Real quick. Well, we're waiting to gain viewers. This is some professional level stuff here. So we're gonna sit around bullshitting until we have a couple more viewers.
Well, yeah, let's. Someone just said try all the platforms, and yes, that is what I am trying. You know, I need to put my readers on to see people's names. The Dawn of Rika. I don't want to mispronounce your. Hey there. We got Tim Stack. We got Xander. That's my son.
Your son is watching. We have to be on our best behavior.
Yeah, that's what he's always looking for.
Oh, shit.
Fuck, motherfucker. Oh God, now my mom's gonna be upset because my mom's probably watching.
So can you experiment and see if we can get someone's comment on screen?
Yeah. Okay, here
I'm gonna. That's the thing we can do. We're trying our technology out here.
Oh, show. Okay, look at me. Show. Oh, hi. Yeah. Oh, he said that. That's Xander. Right. He said that when you said shit. Let's swear. Good job.
I got you. I got you, Xander. I'll be swearing a lot because I'm very.
Use me. You can tell we're Hollywood. He's like, put me in, coach.
All right. I'll go with that one. We have options here. We're working on these. So how was your week? Let's catch up on Lila.
Let's catch up. No, really, I'm not prepared to talk about myself. I'm prepared to talk about everything that's getting under my skin. No, actually, we went to the beach. We went to the Santa Monica Pier, and I'll tell you, it was a real act of faith to go into water that just a week ago had 17 million gallons of raw sewage go into it. So if that didn't kill me, I'm probably, it's all the wine I drink.
Is that like with hot dogs, like that's an acceptable amount because of how big the ocean is?
Like the rat shit and hot dogs.
Yeah, rat shit. It's like the rat shit and hot dogs.
Raw sewage in water. I mean, it's so vile to think about what probably entered our bodies. I tried not to let anything go in my mouth, but like the problem.
Xander, cover your ears for what I'm about to say. I'm not going there.
I think he laughed.
You just keep lobbing them up. This is not even our show after hours yet. But...
I'm trying to help you. I'm your straight man.
That's true.
Say goodnight, Gracie. How was your week, Pat? What did you do this week?
So I went clamming, which is not. It's not a Tinder thing. It's actually. It's where you fish in low tides, but you're not really fishing. You just take advantage of the low tide and you go out when the water goes away and you reach in and grab clams and dig them out, which was great. But I just want to say to the COVID people out there, the COVID deniers, God damn it. I am so over you people. So one of the people that went on our trip told us that he was vaccinated. He was not vaccinated. Turns out he had COVID. So we were all camping with a COVID person. And the purpose of the trip, not to bring the show down, but my best friend's got cancer and who knows how long she's going to be here. So this was a tight knit circle of her friends. And this guy goes out there and exposes her to COVID.
That's insane.
She tested negative today. So, she didn't get COVID, but come on.
It's just so irresponsible and selfish.
There are so many people out there that cannot be exposed to this. And don't be selfish. Like, think of them if you're on the fence or something. Anyway,
next, I know we're going to talk about it, because how can we not talk about COVID and vaccinations and how we're dealing with it? But, I am trying to find some compassion and understanding for people who are vaccine hesitant or scared right now, or have other reasons for not getting it. But what you don't do is lie and say that you have been vaccinated and be in a small group with somebody who's immunocompromised. Like, there's no excuse for that ever.
Yeah. And you're on this trip because this group, it could be her last trip camping. You know what I mean? Like, that's not to laugh about it, but it's like, come on. And, if you expose someone like that who needs chemotherapy regularly to COVID, they can't get chemo while they are positive for COVID. So you could literally kill someone like that in a short matter of time. So that didn't happen. So let's move on. But
geez, sorry.
I got nothing but just, it's hard for me not to have hate in my heart for people who don't get vaccinated intentionally. So I'm trying not to. And Lila brings me back to, a lot of people have been misinformed, and it's part of why we need a trusted media to report responsibly on the science.
Right.
And we don't have a trusted media. So some of the people that are
media, we don't have trusted healthcare, government. There's so many issues.
Right.
You should be able to trust your friend who says I'm vaccinated. Like that, that is really disgusting, and I'm so sorry.
Yeah. All right. The news. Shall we get to the news?
Yeah, let's go to the news. It's been a slow news week.
It's been a slow, but like, shame on Democrats week, I think, in general. Is
it ever not one of those, to tell you the truth?
Yeah, a lot of just dumb shit from Democrats. So Biden, his approval rating drops to the lowest number to date, under 50%.
Yeah.
Well, it was 50%, but for him to be at 50%, and he's supposed to be the guy pulling us out of COVID, and Trump was the worst and awful, and listen to science guy, and he's already at 50%, bodes really badly for the midterms.
It really does. He was propped up, as we all know. We were going to push him left. There were actually, even as paltry as they were, some campaign promises that he made, whether it was the $15 minimum wage, a public option, canceling some part of student debt, $2,000 checks. And it's just like tick one after another, nothing. We've bombed Somalia. We bombed, look at my mind. Syria, Yemen. I don't know. We've gotten the bombs going. Yemen, I think. I'm so sorry. I just had a total mental, it must be the water. It must be the sewage water. But just this week we bombed Somalia, and he still is a fierce defender of the filibuster. He will not use his bully pulpit as the most powerful man in the world to try to shame people in his own caucus to get behind it, because we all know he doesn't care. So now his approval rating drops to 50%.
Right. So, I mean, we're in a 50-50 country. It's pretty much, anyone in power is going to be around 50% support, because it's going to be, we're in such a polarized nation. And, Trump was, how bad was Trump doing at his worst? I mean, like 47 or something, was his approval rating?
No, I think if I remember correctly, I think he even got into the 30s at one time, not with his own party. But yeah. I mean, Biden is low for him right now. I mean, I don't want to give up hope, but I don't see a way out of this for the midterms or 2024 unless he does some things to change the conditions that brought us Trump in the first place. And nothing is being done to get to that place.
Well, we're talking about next November for the midterms, right? So he's going to be judged on COVID then, just like Trump was judged on COVID. And COVID saved Biden and Democrats. I mean, without COVID, they never would have won. And we're going to be in the same situation reversed this time around for Republicans, because, they're going to look at everyone running for elections is going to look at the Democrats and say, well, you guys botched COVID. This whole thing was about COVID, and here we are.
Right.
And they're going to, obviously they're going to say we shouldn't be locked down and all the ridiculous
Right.
Republican talking points. But if you're a Democrat, you're going to say, well, look, Biden was supposed to listen to science, and we're in this mess because he didn't listen to science.
Yeah, I wonder how right now I feel like they're pushing that narrative so hard, right? Like this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. That anybody who's not getting vaccinated is a stupid Trump voter. And that's just not true. I mean, that's not actually, the numbers aren't bearing that out, right? I was just reading that I think 50% of Black Californians are unvaccinated. So we went from 7 months ago saying Black voters saved our democracy, and now Democrats are throwing them under the bus and lumping them with MAGA people. I mean, we've got some work to do.
And Black voters in California, especially, are predominantly Democrat. I mean, it's not even close. It's a massive
in the country,
and
Democrat,
and it's a different kind of Democrat than some of the Democrats in other states, because it's very, some of the Democrats in other states are borderline Republicans, like the Black voters in like North Carolina and some of those other states. They're very conservative socially on social issues and whatnot. But yeah, to lose California, I mean, for California, the Black population to be that under vaccinated is really kind of incredible.
Right. And it speaks to a history of being mistreated and lied to and not heard. I mean, there's a reason for that mistrust. And it's, it's across the whole country that these numbers are bearing out. Again, not just in red states, even though I know they have the highest. But I think that if the aim is to solve this issue, then Biden and his administration need to take a different tactic. They cannot just blame people who are not getting vaccinated. They have got to bring them.
So let me give you an example from my real world situation that just happened. So 2 days ago, my cancer friend realized she was exposed to COVID, so immediately went out and tried to find a test. So the free test that you can get is a 1 to 3 day notification. So you may not know for 3 days. So she's doing the responsible thing. But say you're a poor worker, or just somebody who doesn't have a lot of disposable income, and you depend heavily on your work income. You can't take the time off to find out if you have COVID in some cases. But if you want to, and you're doing the responsible thing, well, that could be 3 days of work you're missing just to find out you're negative. So a lot of people are just going to go to work with COVID. I mean, so, and she also decided to, she took that test, and then she also paid for an expedited test. There's no expedited test that's free. So it was $100 to pay for the expedited test to find out right away. And obviously the results are less reliable on the expedited test. So, when you have a society that wants to get to rid itself of something like COVID, I mean, you would want all of those options to be free and easily accessible to everybody. And people should be able to take time off without losing pay during this period, for example, or,
Yeah. And I think there's a moratorium on that also, right? Like the only people who are allowed to claim workplace fear of COVID or anything like that with the workplace are healthcare workers now. They've lifted all the other protections for workers because they want to get people back to work to not make a living wage.
That is the whole push right now.
Yeah.
So in other news, and this has never stopped, Biden says Russia's spreading misinformation ahead of 2022 elections.
I'll tell you, I am so ready for what are they misinforming? Do we have healthcare? Do we have a living wage? Do we have a Green New Deal? Or were we poisoning our people with water and air by fossil fuels and manufacturing? I mean, what's the misinformation? I'm so curious. They don't even say it in there.
And what is the extent of it? Like I've said this before, but my Twitter account was spread more than the Russian misinformation in 2016, and that was the big thing, is that there was all this misinformation being spread, and it all accounted to sharing Joanne Reed, Joanne Reed's Twitter
Right.
account a lot was somehow spreading misinformation. So,
Yeah.
they overplay their hand. Like, obviously, every country is always spreading misinformation to help their
Right.
economic interests. The U.S. does it all the time. Russia does it. Every single country does it. But
Every single
what's
country
the
does.
extent of it? Like,
Right.
you can make a story out of it. Like, this
Yeah.
doesn't say how much,
And what, like, exactly what is the misinformation? I mean, what is the and we know this, and I know you're going to get to another visual here, but like, we know the way to deal with this. And that is the one thing that neither Democrat nor Republican will ever do, which is broad, universal policies that help people. We're never going to get rid of racism in this country, right? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go back to that. No,
No,
it is okay.
let's just jump ahead
Just like,
because
because, yeah,
this fits your point. This is how
yeah,
other countries look at it. So, I
yeah.
mean, go ahead if you want.
Well, yeah. I mean, I just feel like, I think Brianna Joy Gray talks about it a lot. She's like, all the people who were racist when they voted for Trump, a portion of those people were still racist, but they voted for Obama before when they had hope, right? When he gave them something that they thought they were tangibly, materially going to get different by electing him. So, yeah, I mean, if I looked into many people's hearts, most liberal friends of mine, probably everybody you've ever met, you're going to find things that are unpleasant and bigoted and gross. But the way to create a society that looks out for each other is that comes from the top down. I mean, that comes from social programs, welfare programs, health programs that benefit everybody. And instead of ever taking a penny out of their big lobby donors, they're just going to keep going off with this Russia nonsense.
Yeah, well, and the bulk of this, I mean, the point of this tweet right here, for example, is that Germany gave out a lot of money to try to protect people from fascism, and their vision is, look, we're doing something that clearly helps people. The state as it is positive. And Democrats have an opportunity right now to basically Republican proof themselves.
Yeah.
They can. There are so many needs that need to be met, that everyone understands needs to be met, that they can claim for themselves and pass legislation such as universal health care, and people can experience it for 3 years, and then in 2024 it's a slam dunk for the next Democratic nominee. But they don't,
yeah, sorry.
But that's where they're at. It's they always are going to do as little as they can to be on the margins of possibly winning, possibly losing. But there's nothing, you get rid of the filibuster, you spend a lot of money. There's no way Republicans win in the midterms. There's no way that Republicans win in 2024.
Right. I keep seeing people say, pundits, Democrats never learn. Why don't they learn? I thought they were going to learn after what happened in 2010, after Obama, didn't deliver on healthcare or bailing people out. And, I think if I just don't understand how anybody still sees it that way. It's very clear to me that that's not what winning is for Democrats. Winning for them is to keep this money train going. So it's easier for them to do that when Republicans are in power because they can raise money off of that. I don't understand why people are still thinking that possibly Democrats don't know how to win. I just don't think that what Democrats see as winning is what Democratic voters see as winning. And until people sort of reconcile those two ideas, I think there's going to be a lot of Democrats are so weak, they're so feckless, they're cowards. They're none of those things. They are complicit, and they are working for the same people Republicans are working for.
That's it. And I push back a lot of times when I hear that too, they're making strategic mistakes, and but they're strategically, they've got Joe Manchin and they've got Kristen Sinema, and that they're going to hang everything on them forever for not passing legislation. Like, they're in the perfect position right now. All Democrats can come out in support of all these policies they want, and we couldn't pass it because of those two forever. I mean, that's the game. And then when they don't win, we're already getting the Russia scare. Well, Russia.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on to some other fun stuff about the White House isn't telling us how many people in their own staff are vaccinated that have COVID. And this
That's
goes back to what we talked about last week, that our numbers in this state, in this country, don't match. The message from our government is that people with COVID are very, a teeny small amount of people hospitalized with COVID are vaccinated. So it's only something that affects the unvaccinated. But you
right.
look at other countries and it's not true. Other countries are
Right.
saying it's 30, 40% of their people are already vaccinated and having COVID.
Right. Yeah. And so the Believe Science crowd, I mean, right away they said they weren't going to be testing people who had been vaccinated. That happened right away. They weren't going to be testing them if they were asymptomatic. So what that does is it takes off a huge piece of data, which is, can people who have been vaccinated pass the virus along, right? That's important to know. And honestly, I don't know when I'm not a scientist and we don't have the actual data, but at almost 50% of our country vaccinated, for this Delta variant to have risen so quickly, it does make you wonder if vaccinated people aren't also part of spreading it, because I mean,
We're absolutely spreading it like
of course,
crazy. Yeah. I mean, we may be protected from a large portion of
right,
the side effects, and that we're
right.
protected largely from hospitalization or death, but we have to be spreaders or it wouldn't be
It wouldn't be
as
going as quickly, right?
it just wouldn't. I mean,
But to
math.
deny revealing data like that, I mean, that is, again, so I mean, it's just one thing after another. So, Black voters save democracy. That's one thing that's gone. Believe science. Well, you can't believe science if you don't have access to it, right? I mean, it's like one thing after another that we're supposed to be the party of all these virtuous, traits, and we're just leaving them by the wayside.
When the midterms come, we'll know how that strategy paid off.
Yeah, and
Could be
again,
right.
I just have to say, and this is what's so frustrating, is because it won't matter if Democrats lose to the Democratic establishment. They will raise money off of that. The only true losers will be the citizens of this country. We're just going to keep goose stepping further and further to the right while they all, make money from their donors and cash in on their stocks or whatever. Is this happy? Is this the happy time? Do I feel happy? You guys all having a good time out there? Sorry, I'm gonna try and make it. Let's see. Here's something. Here's a good
Here we go. Joe Biden defanged the left.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
That was really interesting because, the different tactic between what Rahm Emanuel used, and he would just browbeat the left, and during when he was chief of staff for Obama, and just basically not give them a seat at the table, tell them to get in line or get out, make fun of them, take the public option off the table. What Ron Klain has done much more strategically was invite the left to the table. And so by doing that, it's like access journalism where, no journalist who gets to go to the Hamptons with Nancy Pelosi and Trump is going to turn around and expose their actual disgusting criminal behavior. And Ron Klain did the same thing with, a lot of people who are working for progressive politicians and progressive policies, gives them a seat at the table, makes them feel heard, turns around, does whatever the hell they all want for their donors, but defangs the left, takes away their ability then to criticize because they want to have access to that table.
Yeah, so that's seen immediately as a step up from the last administration, and that's how you end up with progressives giving him an A+, or he's doing a hell of a job. And so initially you got all these progressives coming out in the last, in Biden's first 6 months saying positive things about him. He's listening to us. We're there. We're part of it. And so strategically, if you're Biden, that's great, because now it makes it harder for you to peel away as a progressive and criticize him. Exactly.
Right.
So, even for Bernie, Bernie
The next FDR.
Bernie being that close to Biden is really a terrible position. I mean, it's we want Bernie to be an outsider, calling out the administration, not towing the line at not angering the administration. He should be the guy angering the administration, and nobody has taken up that position.
Nobody has.
So yeah, and so that's why you see a lot of this anger at people in the squad and whatnot. You know, we want someone in Washington to be a Bernie, and Bernie's not even a Bernie. I mean, I respect the hell out of him, and I think he's a great guy. I'm not going to call him a sellout. I don't believe he's sold out, but I think he sees his role now. He's in a closer inner circle with Biden, and he's negotiating on levels that aren't the same as him being the guy demanding things and holding up votes and forcing the issue.
They're giving him hope. They're giving him hope that he can make change. And when you don't have that hope, you know, and I am not the opposite of harm reduction. What's, you know, the idea of like burn it all down, accelerationist. You know, I think that probably on some level we are better off now than we would be if Trump were still here. One of the things that happened under Trump, though, was people were so angry and so vocal about it. And they were constantly calling him out on everything, which is the way we should all be with people in power all the time. I mean, I don't think we would have had the Me Too movement if it weren't for Trump getting into power, right? And so then what happens? Biden becomes a nominee, and now we no longer believe women. I mean, like each thing that was one of the sort of, you know, small steps that we were making has sort of been completely declawed. We have nothing right now. Honestly, we stopped talking about all the things. Yeah.
There's a real leadership void on the left, and you know, you've got the people in power, which, like I said, I wish we had a Bernie that wasn't Bernie. I wish we need someone from the squad to take up his role within Washington, but we also outside of Washington need other people. And like I always saw Bree as probably potentially, you know, the next phase of people outside, you know, raising hell that people look to in general. And so this whole FTV thing was very, you know, it was weaponized to divide people. I mean, FTV itself, I was forced to vote. I was for, but, you know, malicious people latched onto it and made this wedge issue. So in effect, you know, her power was diminished as a protest voice outside. So, you know, who do we have that people on the left universally agree could lead something in the future? I don't know who that is. You know, I think it's
I mean,
very.
I'm hoping it's. I mean, I'm hoping a little bit it's Nina Turner. We'll see what happens. You know, there's
no, she could be our Bernie in a sense, but you know, she's in the House, and the House doesn't have exactly the same power. But you know, the squad is all in the House, so she could now be the effective leader of the squad. Look, don't put our faith in that. Let's pretend they have their roles and we have our roles. That's how I prefer to see this stuff, because they're never going to act like we want them to act. They're you know, either out of their own self-interest sometimes, or they're negotiating something. But the more people on the outside put pressure on them, the more they have the credibility to put pressure on others. So it's good when we raise hell even against people we support.
I mean, especially because the truth is Joe Manchin doesn't care at all what I say to him. And certainly nobody in the Republican Party cares if we raise hell, right? Like a lot of us worked hard in different ways, whether it was money or volunteering, texting, whatever, for people in the squad. I mean, you know, you hope that at least they'll listen to us a little bit if they want to be victorious at the next election. Yeah.
We have no chance of changing Joe Manchin's mind on something. Come on, let's be real, people. The Democratic Party loves Joe Manchin, and they love Kyrsten Sinema. They are the heroes of the Democratic Party, because they allow everyone else to say they support all these things their donors really don't want them to support. And they can do it safely because it's never going to pass anyway.
Exactly.
All right. Cheery stuff.
All right. What do you got for us? What do you got for us? All right. Okay.
Yeah, this was just amazing. Go ahead.
I mean, it is amazing because it's not so much that Democrats and Republicans have switched places, because they're just all awful. I mean, Republicans are awful, but this whole thing about talking about that right now, and Democrats do this whenever they want to look strong, right? They're tough on crime, they're pro-war. I think that's probably why Hillary voted for the Iraq war. It's like to show how tough you are. And it just, what are your principles? What's your ideology? And the truth is, I mean, Pelosi's ideology is so clear. She's just praying to the green god, right? Like she's all about capitalism and money. And her husband just made $5 million on insider trading. But this is really phenomenal. And again, it's, Black voters saved democracy. That was one. I wish I had a splash for that, because it was one headline after another after Georgia, right? Every Democrat, and even like on Facebook, all my liberal friends, Black voters, trust Black voters save us. This to vote, like to try to show that Democrats are pro police funding and to keep giving police and military more money. I mean, it is just so upsetting.
It's incredible. Like the fact that Democrats are going to pretend that the Republicans, I just don't even know how to respond to this. It's just amazing. It's unbelievable. And part of it is that I'm looking at a picture of Hillary, which is just like it's amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The other thing is, and a lot of, I think either yesterday or this morning, it was trending Blue Lives Matter, because people were pointing out the hypocrisy of the Republicans who, during all the George Floyd Black Lives Matter protests last year, the response, Blue Lives Matter. And during the mob on January 6th, which we can talk about later, but there were police who were getting abused by the protesters who were, I mean, we had thought were the Blue Lives Matter crowd, but here they weren't anymore. And so the point that people were making on Twitter was, it was never really about Blue Lives Matter. It was just about abusing Black people and taking anybody's side against Black people who are saying, we cannot be abused by the system and by police anymore. And so this is just one step removed from that, right? So like we went into the general election after months of the biggest protests that America has ever seen, the US has ever seen, with the Black Lives Matter protests for George Floyd. And then we elected, or we nominated as the Democratic Party, I don't know why.
Author of the crime bill.
Author of the crime bill, who picked California's top cop as his vice president. It was such a stab in the back and the front to anybody who cared about police reform, criminal justice, anything. And so now for Pelosi, of course, this is who she is. We know that, kneeling in her kente cloth, and then, giving more money to the Capitol Police, giving more money to the military. I mean, but it's just one step away from saying Blue Lives Matter in the face of all these people who have been so abused for centuries. It's just disgusting.
And it's such a knock on protesting and the people who they say they represent. Like to go from the summer that was clearly the summer of Black Lives Matter and protesting, and it was the number one issue that was actually reported on the news. So it's the most in the face story other than COVID and the riots. But to turn the response to that is to knock the GOP for not funding more police. Like, just blows my fucking mind. Like, how murdered are they going to get in the midterms?
It's just so vile.
Their own base. This is going to turn off their own base to a record levels. I mean, this is just.
Well, because there were almost like corollaries, right, with the Black Lives Matter protests and registering new Democratic voters to vote. So that was a real galvanizing moment to get more people into the Democratic fold and to say, elect Biden. We're gonna start affecting some change.
And it was that Trump's police response was over the top, even though half of the response to the protests were Democratic governors in charge of the response
Yep.
anyway. But it was all painted as a Trump turning the police on the protesters was
Right.
the fundamental theme.
Right.
And now we're gonna say the GOP didn't fund the police. Like, I'm blown away.
Yeah.
And I don't know why this article has Hillary on top, but that's a curse.
Why do you see Hillary?
Image.
I see Pelosi. That's so funny. You said that, and I thought you were just.
Oh my God! I'm seeing Pelosi. That's me. Holy shit!
That's your beer. Hey,
this is only my second beer.
Okay, well, I need to catch up because I clearly, if I'm seeing
Disco
Pelosi
Ninja
when there's Pelosi, I need some help. I need something to soften the Pelosi blow.
Yeah, we're supposed to have
Noble Vine 667. I'm still looking for my endorsement. Sorry.
This is a local beer, Disco Ninja. I always drink local beer when I can.
I love that name.
They're not sponsors yet, but they should be.
I love the name Disco Ninja. I kind of wish that were the name of our podcast. What
Disco
can you just
Ninja.
tell me about the alcohol content in your beer? Because I always have to do this.
Well, since you drink wine, it's always higher. But this is 7%, so it's decent.
Keep chugging along. You're gonna get there.
So the next thing we have is moving on.
A moment of good news.
Yeah. So Nina Turner's in a really close race, and I know a lot of people are very anti-electoral politics, anti-trusting the squad, and people like Nina. But I still support Nina. I think even if you don't have a lot of faith in them, I think having her in there, like, it's a Hail Mary to maybe get the squad to represent us.
Yeah.
But this lady is backed by literal Republicans. Like, Republican super PACs are quoted on her damn website. So come on, this is a no-brainer that we should, at least, if you're in Ohio, please.
Fantastic piece of reporting by Walter Bragman and Andrew Perez and the Daily Poster. Oh, Pat just left. I hope he's going to get some bourbon. A great piece of reporting coming at a crucial time to reveal, there's the bourbon. I shamed him, to reveal just how corrupt this lying scumbag person is, who of course has been endorsed by James Clyburn and Hillary Clinton. So kudos to those of you who came out to support Shontel Brown and aligning yourself with such corruption. You reveal yourselves time and time again, Hillary and James. Well done.
Yeah. And we talked about this last week, but Shontel Brown, there's this it's called red boxing, and it's a way that campaigns use to signal on their websites to their super PAC supporters, or the super PAC groups they're not allowed to collude with them. They're not allowed to talk strategy, but they do this thing called red boxing, where they list on their website like the attack pieces against their opponent or something like that. Well, Shontel Brown like blatantly put the talking points against Nina Turner in a big bold red box. So it's like it's a big FU to the FEC, to all the voters, to the laws regarding voting. And she, this is on top of that story. So this election's next week. And Nina had a huge lead, and then tons of money started coming in from Third Way. Third Way just recently started pumping a lot of money into Shontel Brown. So if you don't love Nina anymore, fine, I get it. Don't trust her anymore, fine, I get it. But look at all the money put against her. Like, it's a no-brainer to me to still support Nina in this situation.
I mean, I agree. And, I was not the lesser of two evils for the very first time in my life with this past election, general election. I do not think, I should say it in a positive way, Nina Turner, I have an enormous admiration for her. There is just no doubt in my mind that we all need to get behind her as hard as possible to get her into Congress.
I mean, it's 1 week, after this, she's in Congress. We'll see what she does. Can she rein in the squad? Can they start acting like a voting bloc? Can Can she possibly have some influence on the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which, as the CPC, as people say the Freedom Caucus had numbers beyond anything the squad has. Well, the Congressional Progressive Caucus has power and has never, ever used their power. Not once.
Yeah. No, it's and I'm sure you saw also, but that Bernie and Cornel West are going out to, knock doors with Nina this weekend. So that's good news.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think Nina's going to pull this one off, but it's,
not for lack of trying.
Chantel Brown is it's going to be close, and they're going to pull a lot of sleazy shit, which they've been pulling.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway.
All right.
So that's it.
A piece of good news. All right. Cheers. Cheers with your bourbon.
A bourbon break. Here we go.
Bourbon break. Let's go.
All right. Should we move on to a segment? Enough news for the week.
Let's do it.
What are we going to go? Oh, red or blue? Who said it? Red or blue?
This is a good one. Here we go.
Is it?
Is it? It all. What happened to our graphics guy?
Here we go. I just had a bourbon break. So.
Apparently.
Could we get an intern on the show?
Yeah, I know. We got to get an unpaid intern for college credit. All right. The statement on the new CDC masking guidelines ends with a definitive statement. Definitive, misspelled, intern fired. We are not going back to that, he says, regarding the lockdowns, shutdowns, school closures, and disruptions of 2020.
Yeah. So, I mean, who do you think said that? Who does that sound like to you?
Well,
that sound Trumpian?
Especially if he misspelled it, Kofife.
Maybe I did that on purpose to throw people off.
Throw people off. I wasn't even going to out you. I didn't think it was you. I thought it was your intern, your assistant over there.
Yeah. So as to who that is, spoiler alert, it's Biden. I mean,
Believe Science. It's the Believe Science crowd.
Yeah. The Believe Science guy is saying, so the CDC has a new mask mandate saying, people should start wearing masks indoors, even if vaccinated. And the press are questioning them on, where are we headed with this? And Biden is like, oh, that's never going to happen. Basically, we're never going to go back to a lockdown. Well, if the science says you go back to a lockdown, you go back to a lockdown. That was the whole point of Biden's pre-winning the election campaign.
I just want to give a shout out to Kiko, who knew it right away. He came in with that. That's absurd. I mean, I just do have to remind everybody that over 200,000 people have died under Biden. So from COVID. And he still doesn't support Medicare for all. I mean, there's so many ways, and he doesn't support any sort of non-pharmaceutical intervention, right? So, I mean, with sometimes masks, sometimes not, but they're not listening to the science. And the CDC is blowing in the wind any which way the politics and economics go. And so, what they're doing is they're just losing any trust that anybody might have in any institution. I mean, you want people to get vaccinated, trust the science, believe the science. The science says everyone has a right to health care, right? How on earth do you get through life without being able to go see a doctor? The science says wear masks when we have the Delta variant. They were saying that, and the World Health Organization was saying that in May. I mean,
yeah, and the scientists are saying that basically what we have in the United States is the perfect scenario with the percentage of people vaccinated to create, as if we wanted to create this in a lab, COVID that could defeat the vaccines. Because we're going to just keep perpetuating more and more variants because we're so open and treating this like it's not a big deal when half of our country is not vaccinated. So it's just going to keep spreading and spreading and spreading. And it's not if or when, I mean, it's not if, it's when
Right.
the vaccine's going to, the variant is going to break through, and
Yeah.
vaccinated people aren't going to be protected at all.
Yeah, the analogy is when you take only, some portion of your antibiotics till when you feel better, but you don't finish the whole course of it. And what that does is allows the bacteria to figure out a way to grow stronger in the host body. And we are doing that as a nation. We're also doing that as a globe, right? Until everybody, I mean, nobody is safe until we're all safe.
Yep. Let's move on so we
Yeah.
don't bore people. But oops, here it is. Next up, we're gonna do a bunch of these this time.
Yeah. We got a few red or blue because it's so hard to tell the difference anymore. Although, yeah, go ahead. Oh, okay. Suppose your child just decided that at this time they do not want to go to college, but you're paying taxes to forgive somebody else's obligations. You may not be happy about that.
All right. So this is clearly someone who doesn't want student loan debt forgiven.
Yeah. Right.
Which I know it can't be somebody. It can't be a Democrat or somebody on Biden's administration, because they ran on at least forgiving some of it.
I have to say, it sounds a lot like Pete Buttigieg, who didn't he run with that a little bit during the primaries? How, he doesn't want some billionaires' kids going to college for free.
All the Republican talking points. Let's see who it was.
That would be an attitude that people would have. But even take it on top of that, suppose your family was not, your child just decided they want to, at this time, not want to go to college, but you're paying taxes to forgive somebody else's obligations. You may not be happy about that. But you know what? We want all of our kids to reach their fulfillment. To the extent that they want to go to college, we do not want them to be prohibited from doing that for financial reasons. I've had high school students come in here and say with their grades, they're able to be accepted in the Ivy League here and there, but their family's economic situation does not enable that to happen because they have to stay close to home to work, to be part of the family situation. So what we'd like to do is have an economy that is fair, that gives opportunity, and does not hold anybody back because of financial reasons. And again, how some people may view the relieving people of this obligation has to be viewed in a fair way, where we have something that gives opportunity. That's the big word, opportunity, to all of America's families. Yes.
I mean, come on. Opportunity is the new access. And that was a big word salad to say, we're not doing it. Well, how does what's her proposal? What is she going to do to give people the opportunity? I mean, that is like everything that's wrong with Democrats. She says all the right words, and then she's going to do exactly what Republicans and big donors say, which is they're not going to cancel student debt.
But that answer of hers could have been from a Republican. It's like, a Republican is going to say we want to provide all the opportunity,
right?
But some people might think it's unfair because my kid was in the military. They chose not to go to college, or it's ignoring all the data about how many people are affected by student loans. It's not getting into any. My student loans are off the charts. Like, if I really thought about how I'm going to pay my student loans back right now, holy shit. It's ridiculous. But I'm just a white guy with the podcast, which is a sin. I know.
It's such a grifter.
I'm a grifter.
Racking those dollars.
But I mean, they've shown that forgiving student debt would overwhelmingly advantage more people of color. I mean, it's a benefit that will benefit more people of color than others. So, I think single black moms were like the number one person that would be benefited by that program, or something. So, it's ridiculous. So this idea that, we can't do things good for the next generation because it was unfair, and you can apply this to so many things. Like, we can't give you healthcare now because the last people didn't have healthcare.
Yeah, it's a really gross way of looking at life, right? Like, I was scarred by the system, so everyone in the future should be scarred also. It also doesn't take into account the predatory, like, it is just snowballed the the amount of interest that people are allowed to be taxed for, basically. And the other thing is, rich people can go off to college for the price tag amount. Poorer people go off to college for the price tag amount plus interest. So they're being penalized because they have to take out loans to go to college, right? So you're already penalizing people who can't afford it as much for not being able to afford it. So if the price tag is $100,000, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, but the part that nobody talks about is that people with money are already connected to jobs. So these people that go to college that come from wealth they're slotted for jobs if they get the degree. Like,
right.
I can get you onto this position if you get this degree at X.
Right.
Everyone else is not.
Penalty. There's no penalty, right?
Yeah, and overwhelmingly, the people that need their loans forgiven are poor people.
Of course,
it's just massively. Rich people are not taking loans at the interest rates that are, loan shark level.
That's
which
right.
is our government should not be providing loan shark level loans to the poorest people in the country.
Right. And of course, as we know, Joe Biden helped write that credit card law that said that student debt was one of the only debt, I think, that cannot be forgiven.
Unforgivable under any circumstances.
Yeah. And then I want to say one last thing about the thing, because the whole framing of the argument is a lie. Because on a federal level, we could just cancel student debt and it would not increase anybody's taxes at all.
Nothing.
That's not how it works. It would just be
our taxes. Yeah,
federal taxes do not pay for these things.
If you believe or don't believe in the full MMT, one thing that is fact, which is MMT is modern monetary theory. Federal taxes do not pay for federal spending. Right. We have unlimited federal spending, period.
Yeah. So that's already a specious argument. Stephanie Kelton, come on our show. No, that's already a specious argument because that's not the way it works. But also, even if it were, then you just tax billionaires on the back end, right? Like, there's that thing Pete Buttigieg said, like, I don't want to pay for some, Donald Trump's kids to go to college. First of all, they're not going to any public college. Second, they're not racking up debt. And third, if you're really concerned, you tax them on the back end. I'm all for taxing wealthy people a lot. But this argument that Pelosi is making is just disingenuous, dishonest on every level.
Well, which is why she said opportunity 10 times. Like, okay, opportunity. What's the opportunity? I mean, it was just, it was 2 minutes of spin without ever addressing here's the thing I've found with the new press, the media relationship with all of the Democrats is they will actually ask a question that we would like asked as progressives, but there will be no follow-up or pushback or challenge to it.
Yeah.
It's like, please answer this question so that progressives feel like you address this, but it's a PR wet dream if you're Nancy Pelosi to be asked that question and not challenged on it, because then you can just give your spin every time, which is what Biden does, which is what Jen Psaki does for Biden.
Yeah, just a big word salad all the time. I mean, it was the one time that we've seen Nancy Pelosi get the pushback, and I think it was Wolf Blitzer talking about how nobody was getting bailouts or, like the monthly checks. This was like, it's 8 months ago, a year ago, that, good morning, Sunday morning. She didn't even know how to respond to somebody asking a follow-up question.
And they should be asking, because I mean, somebody should run the numbers on this. I mean, Kamala Harris ran on, everybody should have $2,000 a month until like 3 or 4 months after the lockdown is over. Okay, well, do you know how far off that is of what has happened?
Which again is why they're going to say there's not going to be another lockdown. They're getting everybody back to work. I mean, that is what's happening. It's all for Wall Street.
Yeah, we are definitely not going to get locked down, even if it should be the right response. There's no doubt about it. We're not getting locked down.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not encouraging a lockdown, but I mean, if the science says we should stay the fuck away from each other, we should stay the fuck away from each other. And I feel like they're going to ignore that if it's clear as all day.
Yep.
Anyway. Oh, we got one more. One more. These signs are for losers. Lol.
Okay, I actually love this one. I do. I love it. Go ahead.
Well, okay, let's put the sign back up. So the sign, I can't see it in my screen. Okay.
So, you know, this sign, is the sign. Yeah, sorry, good.
No, the sign is, I mean, it's a little live, laugh, love. It's a little like, I'll just read it for people who can't. In this house, we believe Black Lives Matter, women's rights are human rights. No human is illegal. Science is real. Love is love. Kindness is everything. I mean, it's one of those signs that people put up that say, I'm a good person, basically, and scream at their neighbors. But I just feel like, you know, how can you be vocally against that? Like, even if it's corny, even if it's like, pandering and not actually protesting, it's just a sign in your yard. I don't know how you could be against it. So for someone like the person we're going to show to be against it, I just have a little bit of beef with that.
And of course, it wasn't a Trumper or a Republican. It was Emma. So, I mean, you know, I have differences of opinion with Emma on many things where we're holding our squad to account and demanding more, as much as I actually even really like so many of the people in the squad. But she and I definitely come down, Emma and I, on different sides of the Force the Vote and the Medicare for All marches. You know, I love Thomas Frank, and I've been listening to him talk about these signs now for close to a year, ever since his latest book, The People Know. Just great. Get all of Thomas Frank's books any chance you get. And what his point was, in his very wealthy suburb, everybody had those signs. And those were people who were very much, for the most part, non-Bernie Sanders fans, right? They were for the status quo, liberal, virtue signaling. We're just the better people because we believe we're all equal. But they will never say, like, we need strong unions. We need a coalition of a broad worker base of people. We need Medicare for all. We need a Green New Deal. We need a living wage. We need to put our money where our mouth is. And they never do that. So you can't say that, you know, Black Lives Matter and then say that, oh no, we're the party who gives more money to police than the GOP. Like, right?
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you on any of that. To me, I look at that and I think, well, what's the net positive to the public? Like, I just see it as a net positive. Like, if you put that sign in your street, you know, it's not like, I get where you're coming from. I get that there's a lot of this virtue signaling. I get there are Karens out there whose babies probably have BLM shirts on, or, you know,
right.
You know, you're in LA, you probably see that way more than I do in Sacramento. But
I mean, the funny thing is, like, in my neighborhood, there are 3 people who had Bernie signs on their lawn or in their window. Not one of them had that sign on their yard. The people who had the Biden Harris or the Warren or whatever, those are the ones who have that sign in the yard. So, and I don't know, you know, I didn't see that post that you found from Emma. So I don't know what her follow-up was, but if it's to call out the hypocrisy, I'm all for it. I believe everything on that sign. I 100% believe everything on that sign. I love that sign, but like, let's go further. Let's actually enact that. Wow, my cheeks are so red with this light. Who's doing my lighting?
Well, 100%. We should, like, here it is. Yeah. But these signs are for losers. Like, I mean, it's a little annoying to me, especially considering that and I'm not trying to pick don't get me into this Majority Report, Cedar.
So oh my God.
I don't give a shit. Just cancel me. Don't drag me into it. That's all.
Yeah.
But I mean, she's one of the people who is more on the centricity vibe. And this feels like from her, like a plea back to the progressive base, like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm on your side. Like, don't just talk about stuff. Get out there and do it,
On that, I mean, I agree. Yeah, I do agree. But so yes, I guess the source matters, and we don't know the motivation behind the source. One thing that's been really interesting to me in these past couple of years is, so I've lost a lot of friends. A lot of people think I'm too angry when I was like, Bernie or bust, and no middle ground, and a Green New Deal, and healthcare is a human right for real. We need Medicare for all and a living wage, and nobody else is even coming close to Bernie's platform. And all these people, my liberal friends who were for Warren or Pete Buttigieg, Kamala Harris, they thought I was too angry. It's been interesting to me to see them recently, what they feel very comfortable spouting off about on Facebook, which is gun violence. They can talk about that, and people who aren't getting vaccinated. So when they feel that it might affect them, they are angry and they do want to cast aspersions. And it's just fascinating to me where certain people draw the line. To me, the death of our planet, or us on the planet, or my children and grandchildren, whatever, like that to me is worth bitching about. Yes, also the vaccinations, but like it's only when it affects them personally, or when they're afraid that like the randomness of gun violence might affect them. But if it's a systemic exclusion of whole swaths of our population, they're kind of fine with it.
And that's a big dividing point, even on people, among people who are following politics closely, because so many people are self-centered when it comes to their political stuff, beliefs. I mean, I used to be, I'm still very anti-gun in general, but I have come to the point of like seeing the argument. Killer Mike was one of the as a staunch Bernie supporter, for him to be so pro-gun in a sense, but he's not really pro-gun. He's just, if you try to curtail gun violence and your solution involves not getting black people as many guns as white people are getting guns, which is what a lot of this legislation essentially does, that's not a solution, because for one, crime in poor neighborhoods, warrants a gun more than like bougie neighborhoods. If you're in a bougie neighborhood, you're probably safer from violence. You're more likely to kill somebody. But anyway, my point with that is like, okay, that issue, it's hard for someone who comes from a lot of wealth to understand the issue of protecting yourself in your home, in the sense of somebody that lives in a dangerous neighborhood, for example. And so if you say law-abiding citizens can't have a gun in a dangerous neighborhood, that affects somebody more than a law-abiding citizen in a bougie neighborhood they're behind a gated community.
With their private guards and everything. Yeah.
Those two situations are not equal. So, it's a dividing line somewhat. So.
And again, it's always the Band-Aid, right? Like, go get vaccinated. And again, I am totally pro-vaccination. I don't, I'm a germaphobe. I do not let anybody in the house who hasn't been vaccinated. I am pro-vaccine. I also understand why there is skepticism. And if the establishment is saying, just for this one thing that might affect us, we're giving you free healthcare. When it comes to COVID, because we think you might spread it to us, that we're going to, but for nothing else, not for cancer, not for diabetes, not for that does not engender a lot of trust. And so the same, like with gun rights, I feel like it's always, of course, going to work against poor people and people of color. But also, if you really want to deal with gun violence and why people are so angry and why we have so much violence in our country, and crime, you have got to go to the root problems, and poverty and disenfranchisement. Until we address that, you can take away the guns, but we're just never going to get rid of these problems.
No, and economic issues are the number one source of a lot of problems. Now, the worst actors on Twitter and the worst actors in general try to make it seem like if I say economic issues are at the root of like these things, I'm saying that's separate of racism, which is its own thing. But there's no denying that racism is more rampant and there's more violence around racism due to economic issues, because people don't latch on to these ideologies that are terrible. They don't search for scapegoats unless their situations are bad.
Right.
You know, it's taught from generation to generation from people in poverty who they need someone to blame.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And again, like, you know, I just want to, we're not saying that there's no racism but racism didn't start with the election of Donald Trump, right? So there was a way that a whole group of people were able to vote for Obama and then turn to Trump. And we've got to analyze that. I'm not excusing racism, but like, we're not going to fix racism. And by the way, I mean, and I guess this is part of it. It's like the same people who put those signs in their lawn and then will support Pelosi, who says we're going to give more money to police, you know, like, to me, then do Black Lives Matter, or like, what is the thing? So the racism cuts across a lot of the spectrum.
And I mean, the sign does lump all these things in together as like the good opinions you're supposed to hold if you're a leftist. And there's nothing I hate more than like live, laugh, love. And like, if you print that shit on a rock, I really
coexist, baby, coexist.
I'm such a cynic. I hate shit like that. But I also think it's another level to go after that stuff. It's like, right. Okay, people say that Ryan Knight can be corny. He's got one tone message with the duopoly, you know, and sure, let's say I agree with you, but why would I target him when he's still sharing the message I believe in?
Right.
Like, that's still.
Yeah, no, you're right.
You know,
I honestly think for that one, because I'll reveal, like, we were trying to figure out what we were going to do for red or blue, and when Pat sent that to me, I was like, ooh, that's a good one. I really like it, because I do think that there is something that's revealed in a lot of the people who have those signs, that they like to virtue signal. But when it comes to like anybody who has that sign, if you really believe everything that was on that sign, the only choice that you had was to go full speed ahead for Bernie Sanders. And they didn't all. So I think that kind of juxtaposition really points out the hypocrisy. However, I understand that what you're saying, that possibly the person who posted it is doing some signaling of her own. Is that what you're saying?
But no, you're right. I mean, the person with that sign could still believe the whole solution is Democrats. You know, it doesn't dig
deeper, person. Dig deeper.
They could be thinking, Black Lives Matter, so let's fund the police more, because that's the message from Democrats. And when the message from BLM is not let's fund the police more, the message from BLM is defund the police and outsource a lot of the job skills or necessities to mental health facilities and first responders and people that don't need to necessarily shoot everyone all the time. Not rocket science. Like 90% of that job does not involve shooting people with guns.
Yeah.
And it's being given to a largely racist population in the police force who want to shoot people. Let's start there. So anyway, all right, let's move on to red and blue.
All right. Wait, no, we just did
wait, no. What's that?
We read it.
Oh, so I had to read this article, so you.
Yeah,
at least you guys don't have to read it.
We're going to go through this really fast because, go ahead. We read it. So Oh, he left again. Here we go.
Wait, I'll put a graphic up.
What? Yeah, okay. Let's hear it.
Here's the article.
New York Times op-ed. The world needs a heavy hitter on the pandemic. Bush has done it before. So first of all, yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, please.
There are a few words when I had kids that we weren't allowed to use, and hate was one of them. I really don't want to use that. So I tend to just sub in loathe, like that's so much better. I loathe George W. Bush. I think he, way worse president than Trump could ever hope to be, because he actually, got so many of his disgusting policies through, just destroying the Middle East and, the Patriot Act, and he was awful. And any attempt to rehabilitate him or to say that I miss him when Trump was around, like that was crazy to me. So I don't want to bring him back on any level. I don't want him to be a hero on any level. He helped destroy our world. Everybody who was part of his administration and pretends to be anti-Trump is dishonest. They're all part of what brought us to Trump. I mean, there's so many people who are part of that. But so just on the surface of that, anytime you want to exalt Bush or put him in any position of authority, I reject that.
Yeah. So this article, for people who haven't read it and won't read it and shouldn't read it, I might highlight. Basically, the idea is that it's an opinion piece saying Democrats should draft Bush. It's like draft Bernie, but draft Bush to save the world from COVID. It's this, and the idea was that they even said, and I wrote this down, Biden needs someone who the world can't ignore.
I mean, the world hated him.
The world hates him for Iraq. I mean, they know that he got us into Iraq and lied about it. It's not, the world does not love George Bush
on any level. No, they
just
despise him.
But this is the repeated attempt by Democrats and the media
and the never Trump Republicans.
Yeah, right? But to keep this they're good Republicans out there narrative alive. And
right, yeah.
Maybe there are, but I mean, not Bush. I mean, Bush, he got us into Iraq by lying about weapons of mass destruction. It's not even disputable. And Biden also knew at the time, Pelosi knew at the time. They both have come out and said they knew that these were lies and still voted yes to Iraq. So.
Okay, I have some things I want to address in the article, but we have somebody, I'm going to put it up here. Mattis X, if I'm mispronouncing that, I'm sorry, says there's probably a section of anti-vax Trump supporters who does love Bush. He'd be an effective cheerleader. I appreciate that point of view, because as much as I also loathe Trump, I think that if we want to help solve this problem in our country, the Biden administration should be reaching out to him and bending over backwards to bring Trump into the fold, to get him to release some kind of, PSA with Biden where they can joke around as presidents. There's only been 45 of them or whatever the hell, and talk about the vaccine and try to get people to get vaccinated. I think, swallow your pride and eat some crow, or whatever all those expressions are. Let's help get people vaccinated, and whatever you have to do to get Trump on board for just like a PSA or a couple of moments to try to get a few people. So
yeah, I think that is a good idea. I just think the focus on Bush specifically is misplaced. And perhaps if the opinion, whoever wrote the article, focused on, let's get a team together of people. So you're not necessarily rebuilding Bush specifically. Like, why does Bush have to come back?
Yeah. The point of this person, who's James Harding, was that he did a pretty good job in bringing
global AIDS,
right? But again, I mean, I agree with you. I don't think that he is respected on the world stage. It's been, almost 20 years or whatever, 14, 13 years since he's been around. We do not need to bring him back. There have got to be better emissaries. The other thing that I thought was really interesting was at the beginning, he says, Mr. Bush singularly has the authority to turn things around. He could use the bully pulpit and backroom pressure to get world leaders, pharmaceutical leaders, and health agencies to urgently accelerate the funding, delivery, and distribution of vaccines. And what that does is acknowledge the fact that the reason it's not happening is because of people like Bill Gates, who meets every other week with Fauci, denied and fought hard against lifting the protection on the patents. It's all financial. And yes, Biden, as unfortunately the leader of the free world, is in a unique position to change all of this. And he is choosing not to. And that is that goes on his record. That's his legacy. Millions of people are going to die because Biden didn't fight as hard as he could have, or his administration or whoever's pulling those strings, to lift the patents and let other countries manufacture these vaccinations.
Right. And we're all, in a pandemic, we're all victims of the ultimate global rate of the pandemic. I mean, any country that doesn't vaccinate enough people will breed another version of COVID that will affect all of us here. It's just, that is the science. It's baked into this whole thing. Yeah. So there's no doubt about it. I mean, it's a mess. And
it's a mess. But the last person we need helping us is friggin' George W. Bush.
Well, yeah, and you bring up, Bush, obviously mission accomplished. He's known for the mission accomplished thing with the banner. Yeah. So last week we talked about Jill Biden basically was Joe Biden's mission accomplished moment. Jill Biden came out in front of the press and said, "Isn't it great to just not wear a mask?" I mean, this was like a week ago.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the numbers are skyrocketing. The CDC is saying you should wear a mask indoors, even if you're vaccinated. And the push from the White House is the opposite message. So, yeah, I do think, obviously the more you get Republicans, even people you don't like as Democrats, on board for this, the better. But you can do that in a way that doesn't somehow rebuild George Bush. And don't forget that the Bushes are a political family legacy. So, it's not like there isn't maybe some nefarious interest in rebuilding the Bush name. Right. This is not beyond the pale. Jeb Bush was in the last election.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also in the Republican Party right now, it's all Trump all the time. If you're not for Trump, you're on the outs. And so what's happening is like Liz Cheney and the younger Bush down in Florida, who tried to say that he was pro-Trump, and Trump just like put out a tweet against him, which is kind of hilarious, but also kind of awful. The more that Democrats decide we're welcoming all of the never Trump Republicans into our party, while at the same time pushing away Bernie and lying about him and the squad and the more that dynamic happens, basically we just have like a far right crazy white supremacist party and a middle right white supremacist, like half Republican, half Democrat party. And we don't have any left party. And so right now Democrats are like, oh, Liz Cheney, come to the fold. Oh, it's whoever's like for a second, Kissinger or whatever, who's going to be on the January 6th commission. And it's this whole sort of like realignment where Democrats are welcoming never Trump Republicans, who are just as disgusting and Republican as Trump, into their party, while at the same time kicking out everybody to the left of them. So I resent it.
Yeah, the whole thing has been normalizing sort of Republican viewpoints within the Democratic Party, which is like Jennifer Rubin's article this week was,
all the people who retweet Jennifer Rubin, I'm just like, it's like the Lincoln Project, right? It's the whole thing.
Yeah. So anyway, let's end. I think we're on to one good thing because we
We're on
have
to one
talked.
good thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So every week, despite our depression and our, alcohol laden depression, I don't know, does that sound good? We're not necessarily positive about a lot of things going forward, but I want to focus every week on at least providing one thing that's a good org, a good group, a good opinion, a good person, something. So this is our one good thing this week, and it's coming up when I hit the button.
It's Chris Hedges, who, by the way, the beginning part of this whole clip that you're about to show, it's really ruthless on where we are in the state of this country and how close we are to a decline. And he talks about it, and it's super depressing and incredibly accurate. He's brilliant, and he's a historian, he's a theologian. He knows what he's talking about. He's studied empires on the decline and societies that are about to go under. But at the end of this 15-minute clip, there are a few minutes where he shines a light. So
right. So we skipped a lot of the depressing stuff and just tagged the good stuff. But the point is, if you're a progressive, like, you have to start with realism and go from there, and then look for I mean, if you're not being honest about the situation, like finding some hope, it's like a religion thing or something. Anyway, without further ado, and me ruining his words, here we go. And this clip is not 15 minutes. It's just a couple minutes.
I covered the revolutions in Eastern Europe. I saw how lonely acts of defiance to totalitarian regimes, which at the moment were considered futile, kept alive another narrative, ironic points of light. That's what acts of conscience, acts of rebellion do. It appears often at the moment that it's meaningless, but when you stand up to decayed systems of power, systems of evil, and you speak a truth, even people within those systems hear your voice. And that's why the state is pushing through one draconian law after another, whether it's the wholesale spying and eavesdropping, monitoring, photographing of every American citizen, whether it's the use of the Espionage Act to shut down whistleblowers, whether it's the National Defense Authorization Acts and Section 1021, for which I sued the president, federal court and won, which permits the U.S. military to seize U.S. citizens and hold them indefinitely without due process in military facilities. They're all doing this for a reason. They know what's coming. And I've covered uprisings all over the world. You know when the tinder is there. You never know what's going to trigger it. You never know when it's going to come. You never know how it's going to express itself, but you know it's there, and it's definitely here. The corporate state knows no limits at this point. It has no regulation, it has no government control, it writes its own laws, it writes its own legislation. So that the rise of popular culture and the obliteration of real culture is part of this entire corporate totalitarian assault on beauty and truth. And that's what they have to seek to eradicate, because those forces are ones that remind us about how we should live and about what it means to be human. You know, going into Sarajevo, which I did during the war, where 2,000 children have been shot, 45 of my own colleagues have been killed, 4 to 5 dead a day, 24 wounded a day, constant sniper fire, wasn't pleasant, but it was meaningful. And one, I think, has to begin to make that decision, whether they want a life that means something, or whether they want to leap from one hedonistic high to another. You can't talk about hope if you can't see reality, and reality is pretty bleak. But that's the starting point.
Well, that gave me a lot of hope because, I know we're going to, so we are going to be talking to Tara Reid on Monday night. So I hope you guys will all come join us. I saw her this past weekend at the Medicare for All March in Los Angeles. And, there was a lot of consternation and criticism about what those marches were and who was involved. And all of the possible worst interpretations were what were highlighted by some folks. And it left out all of the really heartfelt pleas heard, I think, around the whole country of people who are desperate just to be treated with some dignity and like humans. And so that last bit that Chris Hedges talks about, those glimmers of hope, those sparks, those tinders, it's like the only thing that we can actually do. And gave me a lot of hope at the end of that sort of bleak 15 minutes.
Yeah, and I feel like progressives, we're not positive, happy people in general. I mean, because we're fighting for so much. I mean, we understand, like for me, Medicare for All affects me personally for myself, but also, my cancer friend who's clearly dying and soon from cancer. And I see, she's going to work until she dies. Like she has to in our system. She literally has to work until she dies. So when people come down against any action, see this is where the establishment doesn't want people angry. They don't want people yelling. One person yelling, one person, if you look at Tiananmen Square, one person lit themselves on fire and it changed the world. So any action with us that is not approved by establishment people, who cares? Like it could spark something, it's important. Like anyone that sees a problem and is angry about it and is vocal about it could make a huge impact in the world. And we need to all keep yelling, raise hell. I mean, the media is never going to cover it. The media didn't cover, they're not covering the current strike.
Like
they're not covering the Frito-Lay strike. There's another strike they're not covering.
Yeah, down in New York,
they never covered
the
Medicare
strike. Yep.
Yeah, the Blackhawk strike. That's been going on for like, I don't know, 100 days or something.
Yeah.
A month.
Months. No, yeah.
Days,
sorry.
a month, whatever. Math. Who knows? Who knows? But we need to raise hell, and until we raise hell, nobody responds to anything. And if you think we live in a society where you can petition our Congress people for something, you're delusional. We're not there. So the hope is that people raise enough hell, and to me, you have to obstruct capital. To me, you have to obstruct capitalism. You have to prevent Frito-Lay somehow from profiting. You have to hit them in a way that really hurts them. And all that matters to these people is money now. So that's our current situation. But look at all the people forming unions in their business place, forming unions, striking. It's starting to happen. We just need more of it. And
it's contagion.
It could change the world. And God damn it, let's hope.
Get out there and do it. All right, is that it? Is that our one good thing? Raise hell, breathe fire. Thank you for coming to watch our TED Talk. No, thank you for coming out, and we love you guys. Thank you. We'll see you Monday with Tara Reid.
Tara Reid. Cheers.
Cheers.